The night was cold, the air smelled of dust and smoke. The broken remains of an old alien marketplace stood silent under a dying moon. Shattered stalls and overturned crates lay forgotten. Shadows stretched long across the cracked stone ground. In one corner, inside a broken wooden crate, two tiny alien sisters sat huddled together. Their bodies trembling from the chill. They were twins, thin as bones. Their large glowing eyes filled with fear and sadness. Their small hands clutched each other tightly, as if letting go would mean the end. They had been left there by people who no longer wanted them. People who said they were useless, weak, and not worth saving. No one came back for them. No one even looked back. They were abandoned in the dark. The elder sister, though only a few minutes older, tried to keep her voice strong. She whispered to the younger one, "Don't cry, we will be okay." But her words shook with the same fear she was trying to hide. The younger one buried her face into her sister's shoulder, her tiny frame shaking with sobs. The wind howled through the ruined stalls, rattling broken signs and making eerie sounds. The twins pulled the crate lid closer. But it didn't keep the cold away. Their stomachs ached with hunger. Their lips were dry, and their eyes heavy with exhaustion. They had not eaten in days. Every sound in the night made them shiver. They remembered the cruel voices of those who threw them away. Voices that laughed and said, "No one will want you." The memory cut deeper than the cold air. Then, through the silence, came a new sound. It was faint at first, but grew clearer, a bark, low and sharp, echoing between the walls of the dead marketplace. The twins froze, their hearts racing. Another bark followed, this one closer. Heavy footsteps echoed, crunching over broken glass and stone. The twins clung to each other, their glowing eyes wide with terror. "It's coming for us," whispered the younger one. The elder pressed a finger to her lips, urging silence. Their tiny breaths puffed in the cold air as they waited. The sound of paws scratching against stone grew nearer. Then a shadow appeared at the edge of the ruined square. It was a dog, large, with fur rough from travel, its eyes sharp. It sniffed the air and growled low, its teeth flashing white in the moonlight. Behind it walked a man, tall, wearing an old coat patched from years of use, his boots heavy, his steps steady. He carried a small lantern that pushed back the dark. His face was half hidden by shadow, but his eyes looked tired, cautious, yet kind. The dog stopped, nose pointing toward the crate, ears raised, tail stiff. It barked again, sharp and loud. The twins pressed deeper into the crate, tears rolling down their cheeks. They thought this was the end, that the human and his beast would hurt them, just like the others did. The man lifted his lantern, the golden light spilling across the ground. It reached the crate. It revealed two small faces peeking through the cracks, dirty, thin, but alive. He froze for a moment, surprise flickering across his face. The dog barked once more, softer this time, as if urging its master to look closer. The man knelt down, his heavy boots scraping against the stone. He set the lantern near the crate and spoke, his voice low, steady. "Hey, it's all right," he said, "don't be afraid." The words were strange to the twins, but his tone carried something different. Not cruelty, not anger, but calm. He reached into his coat and pulled out a piece of bread, rough and plain, but fresh. He placed it near the crate, then leaned back, raising both hands to show he meant no harm. The twins stared at the bread, their stomachs twisting in hunger, but fear chained them in place. They remembered how others had tricked them before. Food was offered, then snatched away, followed by laughter or pain. The man did not move closer. He simply waited. His dog sat beside him, tail flicking, its sharp eyes never leaving the crate. Minutes passed, the cold pressed harder. The smell of bread filled the air. The younger sister whimpered, her hunger too strong. She looked at her elder, eyes begging. The elder hesitated, then slowly, trembling, stretched her small hand out. Her fingers touched the bread. Quick as lightning she pulled it back, waiting for the strike, waiting for pain. But none came. The man only nodded slowly. The twins shared the bread, small bites at first, then faster, like creatures starved, crumbs falling on their laps. For the first time in days, food filled their mouths. Tears mixed with bread as they ate. They had been sure no one would ever care for them again. Yet this human stranger, with his fierce dog and tired eyes, had given them kindness. The man watched in silence, his heart heavy as he saw how small they were, how broken. He did not know who they were or why they were here. But one thing was clear, leaving them behind was not an option. The twins, still unsure, still frightened, kept their glowing eyes on him, wondering if he was truly different, wondering if the darkness that had swallowed their lives was finally breaking. And in that ruined place, beneath the pale light of a dying moon, hope flickered for the very first time. The night air was still heavy, yet inside the ruined marketplace something had changed. Two tiny alien twins were no longer starving in silence. Their lips were full of bread, their eyes still wet with tears. The man and his dog sat a short distance away, watching without rushing them. The twins ate quickly at first, but then slowed, sneaking nervous glances at the human. They expected him to snatch the food back, or strike them when they finished. That was how others had treated them. But this man simply stayed where he was, calm and quiet. The dog lay down, its golden eyes fixed on the crate, its ears twitching at every sound. Though its presence was large and frightening, its growls had stopped. Instead it gave a small huff, almost like a sigh, and rested its head on its paws. The elder sister whispered in her alien tongue, "Why is he here? Why give us food?" Her voice was hoarse, her throat dry. The younger sister shook her head, clutching the last piece of bread tightly. "Maybe he wants something from us," she said, her eyes wide with fear. The man reached into his pack again, this time pulling out a canteen. He twisted it open and placed it on the ground, pushing it gently toward the crate. The soft scrape of metal against stone echoed in the silence. The twins stiffened, unsure. Water was precious, and the smell of it was strong. Their mouths burned with thirst. The elder leaned closer, her hand trembling. She looked at the human, waiting for the cruel trick, but he only nodded once, his face calm. She grabbed the canteen quickly, pulling it back inside the crate. The two sisters passed it between them, drinking deeply, the cold liquid soothing their throats. Their small shoulders eased for a moment, the pain of hunger and thirst lessened. The human watched with steady eyes. He did not speak again until they were finished. Then in a low voice he said, "My name is Daniel." He touched his chest as he spoke, repeating, "Daniel." His voice was gentle, as if teaching a child. The twins tilted their heads, confused by the sound. They whispered to each other, mimicking the word in their strange accent. "Dan-yel." The younger one tried, stumbling over the syllables. Daniel smiled faintly. The dog gave a soft bark, wagging its tail once. Daniel rested a hand on its head. "And this is Bear," he said, the word bear firm and short. The twins flinched at the sound, thinking it was a command. But Daniel stroked the animal's fur gently, showing no threat. The elder whispered to her sister, "They have names." Her voice trembled with wonder, as if the idea of someone introducing themselves was too strange. No one ever gave them names before. They were only called Worthless, or Nothing. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his lantern light glowing on his tired face. "You are safe," he said slowly, "safe." He pointed to the ground, then to the crate, "Safe," repeating the word as if he wanted them to understand. The twins clutched each other, their eyes darting from him to the dog, their breathing shallow. Yet something in the way he said it, something in his tone, reached them. It was not the voice of a master or a guard. It was softer, it was human. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the distant call of night birds and the low crackle of the lantern flame. Finally the elder sister dared to lean out just a little, her glowing eyes reflecting the lantern light. She looked at Daniel, then at Bear. The dog lifted its head, staring back, then let out a low whine, wagging its tail slowly. The younger sister gasped, pulling her back inside. "It will bite," she whispered, her body tense. But the elder shook her head. "No, it waits," she said softly. Daniel stayed where he was, patient. He could see their fear, their shaking hands, their thin frames. He knew one wrong move could shatter this fragile trust. So he waited, his eyes steady, his breathing calm. At last, the younger sister crawled forward, clutching the empty canteen. She pushed it back toward him, her hand shaking. Then she pulled away quickly, hiding behind the elder. Daniel picked it up slowly, nodding. "Thank you," he said, his voice warm. The simple act stunned the twins. No one had ever thanked them before. Their small hearts raced. They did not know what to do. Daniel looked at the ruined sky above, clouds covering the stars, the night growing colder. He knew the crate would not keep them alive much longer. He placed his lantern back on the ground and stood, brushing dust from his coat. Bear rose beside him, stretching with a low grunt. The twins froze, thinking he was leaving. Their eyes widened with panic. Their tiny voices cried out in their alien tongue. A sound desperate, pleading. They did not want to be left in the dark again. Daniel turned, his gaze softening as he saw the fear in their faces. He crouched again and reached a hand toward them. Palm open, empty. Come, he said gently. Come, repeating the word, his tone firm yet kind. The twins stared, hearts pounding. The elder shook her head at first, then looked at her sister. The younger one's eyes begged silently, don't let him go. Slowly, painfully, the elder reached out her hand, tiny and trembling. It hovered in the air, afraid of being struck. But Daniel did not move. He waited, his hand still open, still patient. The silence stretched, every second heavy. Then at last her fingers touched his. Light as a whisper. Daniel did not grip. He simply let her feel the warmth of his skin. A shiver ran through her, not of fear, but of something she had forgotten long ago. Safety. The younger one crawled forward, clutching her sister's arm. She touched his hand too, both their tiny hands now resting against his larger one. Bear wagged his tail, letting out a soft bark of approval. Daniel's throat tightened. He knew then he could not walk away. He whispered, safe. Again, and this time, they almost believed it. And in that moment, in the broken silence of the night, the first bond was made, fragile, trembling, but real. The night stretched on, cold winds sweeping through the broken stalls of the marketplace. Daniel knew the twins could not survive another night in that crate. Their bodies were too weak, their eyes too hollow. He could see it every time the lantern light touched their faces. He stood slowly, careful not to frighten them. Bear wagged his tail, nudging Daniel's leg as if to remind him. The twins huddled inside, clutching each other, watching every move, fear and hope wrestling in their small hearts. Daniel held out his hand again, not forcing, only offering. Come, he said softly, his voice carrying through the silence. The elder twin hesitated, her hand trembling. The younger one clung to her arm, whispering in their alien tongue. Finally, the elder stepped out first, her bare feet touching the cold stone. The younger followed, still holding her sister tightly. Their glowing eyes blinked against the lantern light, their bodies shivering in the night air. Bear sniffed them gently, tail moving, his warm breath brushing against their tiny hands. They flinched but did not run. Instead they stood frozen, waiting for pain. But Bear only licked their fingers once before stepping back, as if to say they belonged now. Daniel knelt down, opening his coat wide. He pulled out 2 small blankets he kept for travel, worn but clean. He draped one over each sister's shoulders, the cloth heavy and warm. The twins gasped, clutching the fabric like treasure. No one had ever given them warmth before. He stood, nodding toward the road. Home, he said, pointing ahead, then to himself, Daniel, and finally to them. Safe, the word simple, steady, repeated. The twins did not understand all, but they felt the meaning in his tone. Step by step, he led them out of the ruins, Bear walking close beside the twins, his eyes sharp, protective. The moonlight flickered between clouds as they left the place of abandonment behind. The road stretched long, lined with crooked trees swaying in the wind. The twins clung to each other as they walked, their tiny feet stumbling. Daniel slowed his pace, making sure they could follow. At last, a faint glow appeared ahead. A small cabin hidden in the woods. Smoke curled gently from its chimney. The sight made Daniel's chest ease. Here, at least, there was warmth. The twins stared in silence, their glowing eyes wide. To them the cabin looked like a miracle. They had known only cold walls, chains, and darkness. The thought of a roof, a fire, a place that smelled of life. It was almost too much to believe. Bear ran ahead, pushing the door open with his strong body. The warm light of fire spilled out. Daniel stepped inside first, then turned and held out his hand again. Come, he urged, his voice soft. The elder sister stepped forward, the younger pressed close behind her. Together they entered. The warmth wrapped around them instantly. Their bodies sagged with relief, their shaking lessened, their eyes darted around, seeing shelves with jars, a wooden table, a bed in the corner, and the glow of fire crackling in the hearth. They had never seen such things, not for themselves. They touched the edge of the table as if it might vanish. The blankets on their shoulders dragged across the floor as they moved, whispering to each other in awe. Daniel set down his lantern, then moved to the hearth, stirring the fire, Sparks danced upward, filling the cabin with golden light. He fetched a pot of soup left from earlier. The smell of herbs and meat filled the air. The twins' stomachs growled loudly, making them flinch with embarrassment. Daniel ladled the soup into 2 small bowls, placing them gently on the table. He gestured for the twins to sit. At first they hesitated, but Bear came and sat beside the table, tail thumping softly, as if telling them it was safe. The elder climbed onto a chair, the younger followed, their eyes fixed on the bowls. Daniel pushed one closer to them, nodding. "Eat," he said, his voice kind. They lifted the spoons awkwardly, their hands unused to such tools. The first sip made them stop, eyes wide. The warmth slid down their throats, rich and soothing. They ate faster, spoon after spoon, tears falling as the taste filled them with comfort they had never known. Daniel sat quietly nearby, watching, his heart heavy. He had seen suffering before, but not like this, not 2 small children abandoned like broken toys. The sight stirred something deep in him, something he had long buried. The twins finished, their bowls empty, their small hands resting on the table, their eyelids drooping from exhaustion. Daniel stood, fetching 2 more blankets. He spread them on a soft rug near the hearth, patting it gently. "Sleep," he said, pointing to the fire. "Safe," repeating again. The sisters hesitated, then slid down from the chairs, curling up together on the rug. Bear lay beside them, his large body warm, his tail wrapping near their legs as if guarding them. The crackle of fire filled the cabin. Daniel sat back in his chair, watching as their breathing slowed, their small hands clutching the blankets tight, their glowing eyes closed at last. For the first time since he found them, Daniel let out a long breath, the weight of the night easing from his shoulders. Outside, the wind howled, the forest whispered, but inside the cabin, there was peace. The twins had been abandoned in the dark, left to die, but now they lay safe beside a human and his dog, in a place with warmth, food, and fire. They did not know yet if this peace would last, or what dangers still lurked beyond the trees. But for tonight, they had a place to stay. And for the first time in their short lives, hope flickered steady, like the fire burning bright in the hearth. The fire burned low, casting soft light across the wooden cabin. The twins slept curled close together on the rug, their small hands tangled in the blankets Daniel had given them. Bear lay beside them, his heavy breathing steady, his large body like a shield against the cold. Daniel sat in his chair by the fire, watching the children, his eyes heavy with thought. He had not expected this night to change his life. But the moment he saw their glowing eyes in that crate, something inside him refused to walk away. He could not explain it, he only knew they needed him. The wind outside rattled the windows, branches scratched against the walls. Daniel added another log to the fire, the crackle filling the silence. His gaze softened, but deep inside he wondered who had left these girls behind, who could look at such fragile lives and decide they were nothing. The thought made his jaw tighten. In their sleep the younger twin stirred, her body twitching, her breath short and uneven. She whimpered, then suddenly cried out in her alien tongue. The elder clutched her sister tighter, both their faces twisted with fear. Daniel leaned forward, alarmed. The twins shook as if caught in invisible chains, tears slipping down their cheeks even in sleep. They cried softly, voices filled with terror. Bear whined low, pressing closer, licking the younger one's hand gently, but it did not stop the trembling. Daniel knelt beside them, unsure if they would understand his words, but he spoke anyway, his voice steady and warm. "It's all right, you're safe now, no one will hurt you," he repeated, his hand hovering before gently resting the blanket more firmly over them. The elder's eyes snapped open, glowing faintly in the firelight. She gasped, confused, her small body pulling back at first. Then realizing it was Daniel, she blinked, her breath shaking. Daniel nodded slowly, his voice quiet. "It's just a dream, you're safe." He pointed to the fire, to Bear, then back to himself, repeating the word they had begun to learn, safe. The younger stirred awake too, clinging to her sister, her eyes wide with panic. Daniel sat still, letting them see his open hands, calm and patient. Bear wagged his tail once, pressing his nose against their shoulders until the shaking lessened. The elder whispered something in their tongue, her voice broken, the sound of a child begging. Though Daniel could not understand the words, he understood the tone. He had heard it in war, in camps, in places where the helpless cried out to anyone who might save them. He felt a deep ache in his chest. He wished he could erase whatever memories haunted them. But scars like theirs did not fade quickly. After a long while the twins' breathing slowed again. Their tiny hands still gripping each other tightly, Daniel returned to his chair, staring into the fire. The hours crawled by, until the first pale light of morning crept through the window. The forest outside was quiet now, mist curling between the trees. The twins woke slowly, blinking at the warmth, their faces still pale from the night's nightmares. They looked at Daniel first, then at Bear, who wagged his tail and licked their cheeks until the smallest giggle escaped, weak but real. Daniel offered them bread again, softening it in warm broth so they could eat. They accepted carefully, still glancing around as if expecting someone to burst in and drag them away. As they ate, Daniel studied them. He noticed faint marks on their wrists, like bruises left by restraints, his jaw clenched, his suspicions darkening. These children had not only been abandoned, they had been used, mistreated, broken down before being discarded. The elder caught him looking and quickly pulled her wrist under the blanket. Shame flashing in her glowing eyes, Daniel leaned forward, shaking his head, his voice low but firm. "No shame, not your fault." He touched his chest. "Not you." Then pointed outward as if to say the blame belonged elsewhere. The twins exchanged a glance, not fully understanding his words, but sensing his meaning. The day passed slowly. Daniel worked around the cabin, cutting wood, boiling water, keeping the fire strong. The twins followed him with their eyes, whispering to each other in soft tones. Bear padded between them, sometimes sitting close to Daniel, other times curling beside the twins, watching over them like a guardian. Yet even with warmth and food, shadows lingered. Every creak of the wood, every gust of wind made the twins flinch. When Daniel left the room briefly to fetch more firewood, they scrambled to the corner, clutching each other in panic. When he returned, they only relaxed after Bear ran to his side, tail wagging. That night, when the fire dimmed low again, the nightmares returned. The twins thrashed in their sleep, calling out words Daniel could not understand, their voices sharp with fear. This time Daniel lay his coat across them and sat beside the rug. He did not sleep. He stayed there through the night. Every time they cried out he murmured, "Safe," over and over, Bear pressing close until at last their breathing slowed. Daniel's eyes grew heavy, but he refused to leave them. He knew trust was fragile, and these girls had been broken too many times before. Outside, the forest was silent, but Daniel felt a strange tension in the air, as if the past was not done with these twins yet, as if the ones who had abandoned them might still come looking. The thought chilled him more than the night ever could. Inside the cabin, two fragile lives slept uneasily, haunted by shadows, while a human and his loyal dog kept watch, ready to protect them from whatever darkness still hunted their dreams. The cabin stood quiet beneath the forest canopy. Smoke curled from the chimney. The morning was calm. But Daniel felt a weight in his chest. Something was wrong. He had lived too many years to ignore such instincts. The twins sat by the hearth, wrapped in blankets, their glowing eyes fixed on the fire. Bear rested beside them, his head on his paws, but his ears twitched often, catching sounds Daniel could not hear. Outside, the forest seemed too still. No birds sang. No wind rustled through the branches. It was the kind of silence that warned of danger. Daniel stepped to the window, scanning the mist between the trees, his hand unconsciously brushing the old rifle leaning against the wall. He had hoped never to use it again, but tonight might not give him the choice. The twins whispered softly to each other in their alien tongue, their voices trembling. They could feel it too, the sense of being hunted. The younger clutched the elder's hand tightly, their eyes darting to the door. Bear suddenly lifted his head, a low growl vibrating in his chest. The sound made the twins flinch. Daniel stiffened, his eyes narrowing toward the tree line. Shadows flickered in the mist, moving slowly, carefully. Then came the glow, faint blue lights drifting through the fog, unnatural and cold. Daniel's breath caught. He knew what that meant. Someone was out there, searching. The twins gasped, pressing against each other, fear flashing across their faces. They recognized the lights. They had seen them before, the night they were abandoned. The cruel figures who called them useless, who threw them away, those same hunters were here now. "Quiet," Daniel whispered, his voice steady but sharp. He motioned the girls to stay low. He grabbed the rifle, checking it quickly. Bear stood beside him, tail stiff, body tense. his growl growing deeper. Through the window Daniel saw them, tall alien figures moving between the trees, their glowing staffs casting eerie light across the ground, their voices low, speaking in a language Daniel could not understand, but the tone was clear, they were searching. The twins shook violently, tears welling in their eyes. They clung to Daniel's coat, pulling at him desperately, whispering broken words, begging him not to let the figures take them. Daniel knelt, gripping their shoulders, looking straight into their glowing eyes. "No one will take you," he said firmly. Though he knew they might not understand, his voice was enough. They froze at the force in his tone. Bear barked suddenly, sharp and loud, the sound echoing through the trees. The figures stopped, their heads turning toward the cabin. The blue lights flared brighter. Footsteps quickened, they were coming closer. Daniel cursed under his breath. He pulled the twins toward the back of the cabin, opening a small trapdoor that led to a hidden cellar. "Hide," he whispered, guiding them down into the shadows. They cried, shaking their heads, unwilling to leave him. But he forced them gently inside. Bear nudged them forward with his nose, staying just long enough for them to disappear into the darkness. Daniel closed the trapdoor quietly, covering it with a rug, his chest heavy. He turned back toward the door, rifle in hand. Bear stood beside him, growling louder now, his fur bristling. The first knock shook the door, heavy and demanding. The wooden frame rattled. Daniel gripped the rifle tighter. He did not answer. Then a voice came, rough and cold, speaking broken human words. "We know you have them, give us the twins." Daniel's jaw tightened, his finger brushing the trigger. Bear barked furiously, teeth bared. The voice came again, harsher. "They are property, worthless. They belong to us. Give them back or die." Daniel felt his blood boil. The words struck him like fire, calling those children property, calling them worthless. He had heard such cruelty before in other wars, other places. He would not hear it again under his roof. He shouted back, his voice like thunder. "They are not yours, and you will never touch them again." Silence followed, then the sound of weapons charging. The blue glow flared against the walls. Daniel's heart pounded. Bear snarled. The battle was about to begin. The twins, hidden below, covered their ears, their small bodies shaking. The younger pressed her face into the elder's chest, whispering that they should not have stayed, that the human would die because of them. The elder tried to be strong, but tears streamed down her cheeks. Above them, Daniel moved to the window, rifle steady. He took a deep breath, his mind sharp. He had defended villages before, fought against armies. He would defend this cabin the same way. The first alien stepped forward, light glowing from his staff. Daniel fired. The rifle cracked through the silence. The alien stumbled back, collapsing into the mist. Bear lunged at the door, barking like thunder. The others shouted, their lights flashing brighter. Footsteps pounding toward the cabin. Daniel reloaded quickly, sweat dripping down his brow, his muscles tight. Inside the cellar the twins prayed in whispers, their glowing eyes wide, their little hearts pounding like drums. They could hear the clash above, every shot, every shout, every bark. Daniel stood firm, his body between the door and the trapdoor. He would not let them pass, no matter how many came. The forest burned with blue light and gunfire. The night filled with chaos. The hunters had come, but Daniel and Bear were ready. The searchers had found the cabin, but they had no idea they had also found something stronger than fear, stronger than cruelty. They had found a human's promise. And Daniel intended to keep it. The cabin walls shook as the attackers struck again. The door rattled under the force. Blue light poured through the cracks. Bear barked furiously, his body stiff, ready to leap. Daniel steadied his rifle, his face grim. He had hoped they would leave, hoped the warning shot would scare them. But he knew deep inside these men were not here to scare. They had come to take. They had come to claim what they thought was theirs. Daniel's voice roared above the noise, "You will not have them." His tone carried through the night, a thunder that made even the trees seem to shiver. The first alien forced the door, pushing it open, his glowing staff raised high. Daniel fired. The shot cracked. The figure fell back into the mist. Bear lunged forward, teeth snapping, his growl shaking the air. Another figure rushed to the window. Daniel swung the rifle and fired again. Glass shattered. The intruder tumbled, blue sparks fading into the dirt. But more came, their footsteps pounding around the cabin, shadows circling. Daniel reloaded quickly, sweat dripping down his brow. Bear snarled at every sound, his eyes wild. Beneath the floorboards, the twins clutched each other tightly. The younger pressed her face into the elder's chest, their tiny hands shaking. They could hear the battle above, every shot, every crash. Their hearts pounded with terror. The elder whispered, "He is fighting for us," her voice breaking, "The human fights for us." The younger shook her head, tears falling. "He will die, they are too many." Up above, Daniel knew the truth. He could not win in numbers, but he could hold, he could make them fear. He could show them that these twins were no longer weak property. They were under his protection now. He pulled the heavy table against the door, reinforcing it. Bear stood beside him, barking. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he saw blue light glowing through the cracks of the back wall. They were trying to break in from every side. The aliens shouted to each other, their voices harsh. "Give us the twins, human. They are nothing, they belong to us." Daniel's blood boiled. He shouted back, "They are not nothing, they are children. They are mine now." His voice thundered through the night. Bear barked in agreement. The aliens laughed coldly, their steps heavy as they moved closer. Daniel gritted his teeth, his rifle ready. "Then you'll have to kill me first," he growled. The first strike came against the wall. With splintered, Daniel turned, firing through the crack. The scream of pain echoed. But still more shadows pressed forward, blue light flashing like fireflies in the mist. Bear leapt at the broken wall, teeth snapping, claws raking the wood, his growls furious. Daniel grabbed a small axe from the side and slammed it into the frame to hold it firm. "Bear," Daniel muttered, his voice calm even in chaos, "we hold here." The dog barked once in reply, his tail stiff, his eyes blazing. Beneath the floorboards, the twins sobbed, their glowing eyes wide in the dark. The elder tried to be strong, whispering that the human would not fall, whispering that Bear was strong, but her voice shook with every word. The aliens struck again, the cabin groaned, wood cracking. Daniel's arms trembled from the force as he braced the door, his mind racing. He knew they would break through soon. He could run, he could open the trapdoor and flee with the twins into the forest. But no, he had chosen his fight. He would not leave them to be hunted again. His choice was clear. He whispered to himself, "I fight." The word steady, final. The aliens burst through the window, shards flying. Daniel swung the rifle like a club, striking one across the face. Bear launched himself at another, teeth sinking into flesh, the cabin filled with shouts and growls. Daniel fired point blank, the blast echoing so loud it shook the rafters. The alien fell. Daniel turned, swinging again, sweat pouring, his heart pounding. Still more pushed in, their glowing staffs raised high. Daniel ducked, the light searing past his head. He slammed the butt of the rifle into another's chest. Bear dragged one to the floor, shaking until the body stilled. The room smelled of smoke and blood. The fire hissed in the hearth. Shadows danced wild across the walls. Daniel stood tall, his chest heaving, but his eyes fierce. Outside, the aliens hesitated, their voices sharp. Some cursed, others argued. They had not expected this. They had thought a lone human would fall quickly, but here he stood, a storm of defiance. Daniel pointed his rifle through the broken door, his voice rising like iron. "You think them worthless, you think them nothing, but I see their worth, I see their life, you will not take them." The silence after his words was heavy. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. Bear stood at his side, muzzle bloody, tail stiff, his growl still low. Then came retreating steps. The shadows faded, the blue light dimmed. The aliens pulled back into the mist, their voices angry, defeated. Daniel lowered the rifle slowly, his breath ragged, his arms trembling. Bear barked once, sharp, victorious. Daniel stood in the wreck of his cabin, broken wood, shattered glass, but still alive. Beneath the floorboards the twins heard the silence. They looked at each other, their tiny hands clutching. The elder whispered, "He stayed, he fought." The younger nodded through her tears, whispering, "He is ours now." Daniel uncovered the trapdoor, pulling it open. The twins stared up with wide eyes, their faces wet with tears. Daniel reached out a hand, his voice steady, "It's over, you're safe." They climbed out, their small bodies trembling. They clung to his coat, pressing their faces against him, their tears soaking the fabric. Bear wagged his tail, nudging them with his nose. Daniel wrapped them both in his arms, his voice low but firm. No one will ever take you again. The choice had been made, and he had kept it. The night finally grew quiet. The forest outside lay still once more. No more footsteps. No more blue light glowing between the trees. Only silence and the faint crackle of the fire in the cabin. Daniel leaned against the wall, his rifle heavy in his hands, his breath slow but steady. Bear stood beside him, his fur streaked with dust and blood, but his tail wagged slowly, proud and watchful. The cabin was damaged, the door splintered, windows shattered, smoke lingered in the air. Yet inside, warmth still burned, and more than that, something new had taken root. The twins clung to Daniel's coat, their tiny hands gripping as if they feared he might vanish. Their glowing eyes looked up at him with something different now, not only fear, but trust. Daniel sank to his knees, wrapping his arms around both of them. Their small frames pressed tight against him. He whispered softly, "You're safe now, no one will hurt you." His voice cracked with the weight of what he had just promised, but it was the truth. The elder twin trembled, her lips parted as if to speak. She struggled, the words broken in her alien tongue. But then, in a soft, uncertain voice, she tried the human word she had heard again and again, "Father." Daniel froze, his heart stopping, his eyes widened. The word hit him deeper than any weapon ever could. He looked down at the girl, at her glowing eyes full of tears. She whispered it again, "Father," her tiny hands clutching him tighter. The younger echoed her sister, her small voice even softer, "Father." Daniel's throat tightened, his vision blurred. He had lived through many battles, seen too much loss, carried too many scars. Yet nothing had ever broken through his armor like this. Two abandoned alien children calling him something he never thought he could be again. He pressed his forehead gently against theirs, his voice low, steady, "Yes, I am your father now." Bear wagged his tail hard, barking once as if to seal the bond. The twins sobbed into his chest, but they were no longer sobs of fear. They were cries of release, of finally finding a place to belong. The night dragged into dawn. The pale light of morning spilled through the broken windows, painting the cabin in soft gold. The forest outside shimmered with mist, a new day rising. Daniel worked through the morning, repairing the door as best he could, gathering wood, cleaning the broken glass. Bear carried scraps of wood in his mouth, dropping them proudly at Daniel's feet. The twins watched from the hearth, their eyes following his every move. He noticed how they no longer sat trembling in silence. Now they whispered to each other with sparks of curiosity, pointing at the shelves, at the jars, even at Bear, giggling softly when he licked their hands. He brought them more food, bread and warm soup, and this time they ate slowly, savoring each bite, no longer afraid it would be taken away. Later, when the cabin was steadier, Daniel opened the door and stepped outside. The twins followed cautiously, clutching each other's hands. Bear bounded ahead, sniffing the ground, his tail high. The forest was alive again. Birds sang from the branches. The wind rustled the leaves. The terrible silence of the night was gone, replaced with the sound of life. The twins looked around with wide eyes. Sunlight touched their faces. Their glowing eyes sparkled. They had never felt the warmth of morning like this, never seen the beauty of a forest free of fear. Daniel placed his hand on their shoulders, guiding them forward. He pointed to the rising sun, his voice steady. "Safe," he said, repeating the word slowly, "safe." The elder whispered it back, stumbling over the sound, "Sa-Fe." The younger repeated after her, their voices shy but hopeful. Daniel smiled faintly, pride filling his chest. They were learning, not just words, but the meaning behind them. They spent the day together. Daniel showed them the small garden behind the cabin. The twins touched the leaves with wonder, never having seen food grow from the earth. He showed them the stream nearby, where clear water ran cold. They laughed when Bear splashed through it, chasing fish. For the first time, their laughter filled the air, light and pure, a sound Daniel thought he would never hear again. But even in peace, Daniel remained watchful. He knew the attackers might return. He had seen enough in their eyes to know they would not give up easily. Yet he also knew this. He would fight them again, as many times as it took. That night, when the fire burned warm once more, Daniel tucked the twins into his bed instead of the rug. They curled together under the blanket, their glowing eyes half closed. Bear lay at the foot, guarding them. Daniel sat by the fire, staring at the flames, his body weary but his heart full. He thought of the word they had spoken, Father. He whispered it softly, the sound filling him with both pain and healing. For once in his life, he was not alone. As the flames flickered, the elder stirred in her sleep, her hand reaching out. Daniel caught it gently, holding it until her breathing slowed. The younger sighed, pressing closer to her sister. Daniel leaned back, closing his eyes, his voice low, a promise to himself, to them. You are not abandoned anymore. You are not worthless. You are mine now, and I will keep you safe. Outside, the night returned, but inside the cabin, there was no fear, only warmth, only love. And so, in a broken world where they had once been left in darkness, two tiny alien sisters found something brighter than they had ever dreamed of. A father, a family, and a loyal dog who wagged his tail as if he had known all along. A new dawn had begun, not just for the twins, but for Daniel too.